Hi guys, so today we're going to look at stress and intonation. So what are stress and intonation? So stress is about the emphasis we put on certain parts of words, certain syllables, or certain words within a sentence, okay? Whereas intonation is about the rising and falling of our speech when we speak, and it's very important that we include these to sound natural and not to sound like a robot. Okay? So let's start talking about word stress. So word stress is about when we stress certain parts of the word more than the other parts. So in Spanish, you guys are very lucky. You already have accents in your writing, which will help you to know which part to stress. In English, unfortunately, we do not have that. It's definitely a shame. But if we want to know which part of the word to stress, it can be a real challenge. One thing that is important though is that in English we will tend to stress the first syllable much more than other parts of the sentence. So this doesn't always happen, of course, but that is one point to help you. Definitely to stress the first syllable much more than you would in Spanish. We take a couple of examples here. We can look at the word interesting. Interesting. So most of my Spanish speaking clients will say this as interesting, with a stress on the second syllable, or interesting on the third one if they add that. But in English we're going to stress the first syllable here, so we will say interesting. Interesting. Okay, so as you know by now, if we have a vowel that is unstressed, in most cases it will be pronounced as the schwa, so the sound, okay? With the mouth almost closed. So let's look at an example with this. So we have the word focus. Focus. So with this we have the stress on the first syllable, and this fo is pronounced like the word phone. So it's not like fo in another word. It's faux, okay? But the second part is this C-U-S, and here, because it's unstressed, this U will be pronounced with the schwa sound. So it'll be pronounced as focus, kus. So it won't be pronounced as kus with the lips out together. It'll be very relaxed with the schwa sound, kus, kus, kus. Okay? Focus. Okay, so English is what we call a stress-timed language. And this means that we will say certain syllables longer or certain words longer than others in a sentence. Whereas in Spanish, you have what we call a syllable-timed language, and that means that every syllable will be more or less the same length. So let's go ahead and look at some examples to understand this. Okay, so let's have a look at a sentence, and if we say all of these words for the same length and the same stress, let's have a listen to what that's like. Are you an engineer? Are you an engineer? Does that sound natural to you? Or does that sound a bit like a robot, or maybe a beginner in English? So how would a native speaker really say this? What we'd really say is, are you an engineer? Are you an engineer? So notice here where I only stress you and engineer, because if I asked you, you engineer, you would still understand what that means. So the other parts are really just the grammar that help us with our structure, but the meaning we can get with just those two words. So the other parts are unstressed, and that means we will pronounce them with a schwa instead. Okay, let's look at another example. So we have, are you working today? Are you working today? Again here, if I just say working today, you'd understand me, and so the other parts are unstressed and pronounced with a schwa. So here we have to remember that when we stress, it's about what we focus on. Okay, so which words do we not stress in a sentence? There is a little bit of a rule here, so we can understand that. So if we look here, we can have two kinds of words. One type is the content words, so this is the ones that we have meaning from, and the other type are what we call function words, and these are the words that we get the grammar from. So most of the meaning will only come from the content words, and the others will just add to the grammar a little bit to help us with that. Okay, so another important point is we emphasize the keywords and we won't use the weak form with schwa when we want to emphasize something. So if we look at a conversation between two colleagues, if the first person asks, "Are you working today?" then we can see here that you is pronounced as y in this weak form because it's clear if you're talking to someone that you don't have to add that u. Okay? Same in Spanish, you don't add a u if it's clear who you're talking about. All right. Whereas if we look at the second example, we could say the reply as no. Are you working today? Notice how I stress the word you and I use the full form here because I'm asking about the other person. So I'm wanting to be clear that it's not me, it's you. Okay, so let's look at intonation. So we have two main kinds of intonation. One is a rising intonation, and we use this when we need to confirm something with someone, so for yes, no questions. And then we also have the falling intonation, and we use this for statements and also for more information questions. Okay, so we use a rising intonation for yes, no questions. These are questions where we need a yes or a no answer. So, for example, are you working today? Are you working today? Do you live in Australia? Okay, whereas when we ask for more information in WH questions with why, where, when, then we'll use a falling intonation. For example, where do you live? What's your name? So I didn't say what's your name, I said what's your name. Okay, so we also use this falling intonation for statements or commands. So for example, I'm working tomorrow. You need to work tomorrow. So we also use intonation to add emotion to what we're saying. So we'll use a rising intonation for emotions such as happiness, excitement, fright, and annoyance. For example, we could say, I'm so excited for you. That rise in the intonation. Or, I can't believe you just did that. In shock or annoyance. And for words and phrases where we're showing disinterest or sarcasm, we'll use a falling intonation. For example, if we look at those two again, we could say, I'm so excited for you. Doesn't sound exciting, right? So it's because of that falling intonation. Or, for example, I can't believe you just did that. Sarcasm with that falling intonation. Okay, so now let's go ahead and combine both stress and intonation to make our speech sound more natural and native. So let's look at this sentence here. If we do this with no intonation and no stress, it will sound as, do you want to meet tonight? Okay, but if we add a bit of stress here, we can say with these weak forms, do you want to meet tonight? Do you want to meet tonight? Do you want to meet tonight? Okay, and now with that intonation rising because it's a yes or no question, do you want to meet tonight? Do you want to meet tonight? That sounds much more natural, right? So practice that a few times. All right, and now if we look at the reply, we have with no intonation and no stress, no, I'm going to John's for dinner. Okay, And now with those weak forms, no, I'm going to John's for dinner. I'm going to John's for dinner. So 2 and 4 are the most commonly used weak forms. We would say t and f instead, okay? And finally, with a bit of intonation there, no, I'm going to John's for dinner. Falling intonation because it's a statement. Awesome, guys. So hopefully that will help you now to work on sounding more natural and native in your speech. And we'll see you on the next one for connected speech.